Welcome back. Recent parliamentary briefings have revealed that the rape remains the most prevalent sexual offence in South Africa, with a staggering 74.1% of new sexual offence cases being rape and, alarmingly, a significant portion of those cases involving children. As we observe Human Rights Day, the spotlight is on the implementation of the Sexual Offences Act and the urgent need to address this crisis. To delve deeper into the complexities of this issue and the steps that the department has been taken, we are now joined by the Deputy Director. This is the Deputy Director General of Court Services, Charles Mohalaba. Charles, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for making time for us. So what would you say the essential message was to parliamentarians around the implementation of the Sexual Offences Act and also dealing with some of the aspects that have been declared unconstitutional?
Well, the Sexual Offences Act of 2007, and I think thank you for inviting us, Eldrin, to your show, and good morning to you and your viewers. The Sexual Offences Act does require government to report annually to Parliament, in this instance being the Select Committee, as well as the Portfolio Committee of Parliament, to report on the implementation of the Sexual Offences Act. And this report is required by law to be submitted on an annual basis. The message that we were presenting to both the Select Committee as well as the Portfolio Committee was clear in terms of presenting the efforts that government is taking to ensure that the legislation is implemented in the protection of vulnerable persons, particularly women and children. And this includes the efforts of the NPA to increase the TCC centers to Tuzela care centers. To what extent has government dealt with the backlogs in terms of the DNA results, as well as the rate of conviction of sexual offenders and other important elements of the implementation of the Act, which includes what kind of support services are provided by the various government departments who are cited in the Act. And in this instance, we were obliged by the Act to report to Parliament on the implementation of the Act, which provides a narrative of what government has done to implement the Act, particularly for the 2023-2024 financial year.
Yeah. And then when it comes to the elements that have been declared, or the sections that have been declared unconstitutional, specifically the one around believe consent, what has the department done to rectify some of those areas that have been highlighted by the High Court?
Well, we welcome the decision of the High Court. And I think as a department, the next steps now would be to ensure that the necessary legislative amendments actually kick in. And the department is hard at work to ensure that those specific provisions are amended accordingly. And the process will begin in earnest to comply with the High Court decision. But I think, Eldrin, with regard to that as well, it's quite important for the members of the public to be aware that when a lady or a child or another person who has been sexually assaulted does not specifically say yes or no, it's quite important for the perpetrator to actually stop any form of sexual exploitation on the victim, because what the imperatives of that judgment is very, very clear that a female would not be expected to expressly say no, and the victim should be actually protected. And the department is working very hard going forward to ensure that the relevant amendments are actually made.
Yeah. Do you have a deadline around when you would be able to do that? Or do you still wait for the Constitutional Court?
Well, the relevant branch in the department is dealing with that. I may not have the specific details, but what we can assure members of the public is that we are working on those necessary amendments.
All right. Let's quickly then touch on the number of cases. In 2023-2024 financial year, 74.1% of the 8,621 new sexual offences cases were reported as rape cases. What does this then tell us about the efforts that have been made, legislative efforts to that effect as well, to deal with this issue of rape? But it seems as though that we can't get rid of it?
We take the view, Eldred and the viewers, that the many legal mechanisms that have been put in place may not necessarily respond to the societal challenges and a crisis of rape, particularly rape in this country. And the Sexual Offences Act is but one of the many mechanisms that government has put in place. And certainly the government is looking at the implementation of the Act. But we're equally worried about the level of cases that are reported in the various police stations across the country. And as of correctly saying, the 8,621 matters that have been dealt with in the last financial year as reported to Parliament. We have been directed by Parliament to ensure that we address two key aspects. One of those would be we should not be reactive to these matters. We should be proactive, and that includes aligning our planning mechanisms as government to ensure that the societal challenges and the societal ills are actually addressed. And this includes elderly issues that relates to the levels of poverty that we see in our communities, which includes and exacerbated by the high levels of unemployment. And of course, those are matters that are contributing to what we've seen being presented in Parliament. And of course, there are also other contributory factors, and those include the excessive usage of alcohol and other related drugs within our communities, which really increases the numbers that we've seen reported before the Portfolio Committee as well as the Select Committee on the NCOP. So these are some of the initiatives that government is going to be taking into account to ensure that we really address the root cause of this. Because when you look at the numbers, 8,621 registered cases is a reflection of the crisis that we have in our country. And we're going to be working very hard with all our stakeholders, inclusive of the NGOs and other civil society organizations, to address this stage going forward.
Okay. And then on the administration of justice, there was a report that was released last year by the Public Protector looking into processing of gender-based violence-related matters within the South African criminal justice system. A number of findings were made, including that the majority of the courts do not have proper filing systems and spaces, but also the sense of re-victimization that is experienced by victims of GBV once they get into the courts where justice will be administered. What's the view of the department around the Public Protector's report, but also the implementation around some of the recommendations that have been made?
We will certainly welcome the report of the Public Protector, and our view is that it really is going to assist the department in addressing the matters that were raised by the Public Protector. We have now submitted our first response to the PP's office, and some of the key findings in that report includes matters that relates to the non-availability of furniture in some of the courts, the issues that relates to the lack of staff around the courts to assist the victims of domestic violence and GBV, matters that relates to the buildings that are not well maintained, and of course the important issue that relates to the language that is being used on the application form for domestic violence orders in the various courts, and of course the other related matters that relates to infrastructure. We have put up a plan. One of the key progress that we've made now is that we're in the process of finalizing the audits across the country, both in terms of furniture availability. The department is now entering into a phase 3 process of the filling of the vacancies, and particularly when it relates to court administration staff and the clerks of the courts to assist members of the public in this regard. We have also made inputs and response to the PP around the issues of what is the view of the department in the creation of a model court to ensure that the victims of domestic violence and GBV are supported. And we continue to engage with the Public Protector in this regard, and we're quite hopeful that the directive of the Public Protector is going to be implemented to its conclusion.